Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This is going to be a voiceover at the end of the 189th edition of the Journey series. I just have a tick on my leg I got to throw out. You know, I have very weird extremes with my body. Like, I don't get bruised very often. You know, I saw this, look down, I saw there was this bruise on my arm, and I had no idea how he got it. And I was talking to my wife about it. I was like, do you remember ever me saying I was bruised? Like, you know, and we've been together like 6 years now. 2018, that's 7 years, coming up in 7 years. And, you know, I just don't bruise, and I often bang into stuff, and, you know, I'm, like a bull in a china shop a lot, and, do things and just don't get hurt. But I have very sensitive skin. Like, whenever a tick's crawling on me, I, like, feel it immediately. Like, it's sense to light touch, so it's a weird thing. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. And so this is going to go in the Journey series, a standalone video on Gratefullness Meditation channel. That's to do with preparing for death. And also this will be going to the video I made today. I haven't really thought of a title, but it just came to me that it's going to be what does Donald Trump, David Hogg, and a few other people have in common, and they're all in this video. A planet that demonic seals. So that'll all be in that title. Today is, again, Friday, April 18th. And that'll be at the end of the video. So a few months ago, I realized that I could not think about anything. Like, I could just close my eyes and just not have any thoughts. Now, the goal of the Sahaj Marg meditation isn't samadhi. It's something that it's a stage, or it's a condition that has opened up fairly early on, where most people experience samadhi, which takes years and years under other yogic practices, where you're in a deep meditative state, but you're not asleep, or it's like sleep, but you're not sleeping. And there's Sahaj Samadhi, which is available in the Sahaj Marg system, where you're in samadhi, but you're not asleep. And I've experienced both of those states. There is a point B that's a part of the first point in the heart region, the very first spiritual point on your journey. Your soul goes through these spiritual points in your yatra, your spiritual journey. And there's a point B, a point A, and point B. If you meditate on point B, you can reach a thoughtless state, but I don't need to do that. I can just do it by just closing my eyes and not thinking about anything, which, is a tremendous thing. And it shows, I have a very active mind, and I'm always thinking, and I like to think. I like to spend my time thinking. I daydreamed my way through, 12 years of school. Out of boredom, I would just imagine things, sit there, I have thought, big mental jokes, whatever, right? Like a very active mind, and which most people do have. And then, to be able to not think about anything, and for long stretches of time, and thoughts will pop in. You know how you have songs that play, and involuntary thoughts, and the cleaning process, and the meditative states that are available in Sahaj Marg makes it so you don't have to deal with those things. So I did that for a little bit, and I'd been thinking about that quite a bit, and I want to get more into that and start doing it in my meditation and working on cultivating that, and also as a preceptor. And the last sitting I gave, it is an individual sitting this past Wednesday, I guess that would be the 16th, Wednesday, April 16th, 2025, individual sitting. And that sitting was one of the better sittings I've given that has passed through me in the Gratefullness meditation channel. And so, then I was working with the Thoughtless State and things like that, which I'll talk about more. And then before that, 2 weeks before that, one of my viewers left this comment. It's a section. I'm not going to read the comment, but I'm going to read the section of a book that he pointed out. Okay, so the microphone's on my chest. Just moved it. I don't know if that's going to make some noise, but it's a little bit, my voice is going to be different here. So the person found it in a book called Meditation, which is excerpts from various books. And I found it was from my master. So in the meditation book, there's two books. One called, it's the Sahaj Marg Learning Series or something. There's a book called Meditation. and one called Cleaning. And it had the books that it came out of. So it did it in the order of books. It took little excerpts out of various books. And it took it out of the book called My Master, which Charji wrote about his master Babaji. I'm hoping I just moved my mic again, so there's a little bit of interference there. And so it starts here. I'm going to read the whole thing from My Master. I asked Master. He asked Babaji. Master became pensive. He said, here, the mantras are said to have worked even if spoken to the ears of an unconscious person who is dying. The only stipulation is that the person be not dead. I asked Master about this. Master became pensive. He said, because you are asking me sincerely, I would tell you, there is no use in this for spiritual progress. Yes, it may grant the person a better rebirth, but what is the use of that? So he's talking about whispering a mantra into somebody's ears as they're dying. Our idea is not to be reborn, however good the next life may be. Our aim is liberation. Now I'm telling you, the aim of the Sahaj Marg system, there's two goals. Liberation, which is no longer having to have any future lives, getting out of your earthborn bondage. And the other one is God realization. So having a better life in your next life is good, but the goal of the system in Sahaj Marg is at least liberation. Our aim is liberation. Now I'm telling you the correct thing. At death, the mind should be made a complete blank. No thoughts must be allowed to come into it, not even of gods or anything like that. It must be made completely blank so that at death it can merge with the source where the condition is that of nothingness. And I tell you, for Abhyasis of our Santha, this is very easy because this is what our meditations, this is what we are taught to do every time they sit in meditation. To us, this becomes second nature. When we sit in meditation, the mind becomes thoughtless. So what we experience, to put it in one way, is a condition somewhat like that of death. You may call it a condition of death in life if you like. So when the time comes, we automatically get into this state of mind, and there's no impediment even at the last moment. Now you see how much harm this Karna mantra can do. It is actually a method of dragging the soul back to the existence instead of allowing it to go on its way. If I tell you this to the pundits, they will pounce on me, but this is the correct thing that I am telling you. So the full quote is from My Master by Parthasarthi Rajagopalacharji, Master Charji, the third master, about Babaji. And there's a variety of those books. It's been reprinted, but the original book, there's Babaji's on the cover. It's on page 138 and page 139. And on the meditation page book, it's half the quote is on page 69. And so let me just speak to some of this stuff. When you're saying these things about the pundits, they have, I was talking about this in the video that I was just making, that, one pundit says one thing and then everyone else sort of agrees with that person. Sometimes there's something controversial, but people often, there's just groupthink in the political parties and in, the Hollywood, all these different things that are covered, sports, talk shows and things. And everybody sort of, that someone makes a statement, people say, oh, that sounds right. And everyone jumps on with it. What Babaji was saying was that traditionally in India, they whisper these mantras in somebody's ear as they're dying. And the mantra is something spiritual. So it's better to think about something higher than something lower. And so it might have some effect in the person having a noble thought, having a spiritual thought before they die. But that thought will bring them back into the next life. Whereas if they're thinking about nothing, liberation is that much easier because they're merging into nothingness, which is, God is very subtle. And so there's this thoughtless state. And Babaji, was a groundbreaker, what people call now as a disruptor in terms of the knowledge base that he had, the things that he would say. And so, first of all, there's that. So I have been, for the past 3 or 4 days, maybe a week, and I think it's 3 or 4 days, I have, in my meditations and sittings, starting Tuesday night and then Wednesday, I have been getting into a thoughtless state. I was having trouble sleeping, and that was part of it, and I would say the mission prayer and just go into a thoughtless state, which I found very, amazing, the ability to do that. Not that I have the ability, but it's just been honed by the Sahaj Marg system. I couldn't do it without the system. Like I say, I have a very active mind. And just sit there, a thought will pop into my mind at different times, but for the most part, it's just thoughtless. And the more I do it, the more better I'm getting at it. And then I fell asleep in a thoughtless state, and I had really amazing sleep. And, I guess there were some dreams and just some experiences of the sleep. And my thought process the next morning was very clear. But what I also experienced, and also given that sitting where I'd have a thought or a suggestion, to start transmitting, the idea would be to start transmitting. And then there was a suggestion, it was an absolute sitting, which you connect the person experiencing this sitting, the idea that their mind comes from the absolute, the original thought that created the universe. And you don't have that second part, but that's what the absolute means. Their mind came from the absolute, is identical to the absolute, and is connected to the absolute, and is meditating on the absolute. You have this thought, and then it becomes a feeling, and then there's no thoughts. There doesn't have to be any thoughts. There's just energy. You can feel the energy surging through your body, surging out. There's a conduit, in a very subtle way. And then, I found that I was breathing heavily, like I was putting some effort into being thoughtless. And then I relaxed my breathing, and that changed it. That sent, deeper level vibrations. And I was just sitting there experiencing the feeling of the sittings and my meditation. And I realized, I wasn't thinking about this quote because I wasn't thinking about anything. But when you're in a thoughtless state, you're dead. Like it's just, you're a big part of you being alive is the ability to think, right? You can be in a coma, you can be brain dead, and there could be brain activity. But if you're able to cease all brain activity, you enter in a state of death, right? Because our ability to think, I think, therefore I am. And so it's interesting because it is, you are going into a death-like condition. When you fall asleep, there's still brain activity and your mind's reprocessing things, you're dreaming. But when you're having no thoughts at all, and I would wonder what it would be like if, and I'm not going to do this because I'm not going to have somebody hook up electrodes to my head because I don't give a shit. But it'd be interesting to find out what it would be if they, were able to study this. And, the whole thing's really interesting because it's like you're dying and you have this, sense of like, that's why people like to think, right? It's like there's people who have to talk constantly. There's people who can't let there be any silence. They can't just get into a state. There's people who can't even watch TV without talking, like people who talk all the time. They can't, the airway has to be either with them talking or them listening to somebody, more often them talking. And they can't stop and just, like sometimes you're with somebody and you both stop talking and you're just sitting there together, maybe in a car or, wherever it is. Like you don't always have to be interacting in a verbal way. And then there's people who, they can't settle down and meditate because their minds are too active and busy and they have all random thoughts and they have no control over their thoughts and they're just all these types of things. And some of the fear is of like that feeling of death, or if they stop, people who are experiencing trauma or repressing memories, they can't stop doing any of those things because they don't want to stop, because that's when like the monsters set in their mind, right? That's when the abusers and the negativity comes to them. So, this is all really important stuff. I was like, I got to find that audio, and I think I mentioned putting it in a journey series, maybe the list one, I don't know, where I had this, I was talking about sleep, and I did all this research because scientists don't know what happens when you cross over from being conscious to unconscious. Sometimes you're in and out of sleep, you're phasing in and out, your eyes are open, your eyes are closed, and then there's a moment where you just go, right, where you're out, and then you're unaware of what's going on around you, right? You're watching TV, you're laying in bed, and you're whatever you're doing, and then there's some point you're unconscious. And you might wake up in 5 minutes or a half hour, but you went out for that time, and they don't know what happens to you physiologically or any of these things. They have no idea. And I was going to make a video about this like 5 years ago, and I made the video and I lost the video. But I have one of the voiceovers. And I'll look to see if I can find that, and I'll include that in future videos, talking about this stuff. So I just looked up the audio. I must have it hopefully on some backup. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But I had it at some point. So, but some of what I was saying was, I found a folder asleep where I made the video. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. So going into this idea that you're thoughtless, it's the ability to think that gives you like life, right? It's who you are. If you're not thinking, if you're in a vegetative state. And so I found that there's been this profound benefit to not thinking. Not through the whole meditation, but I've been doing it at the 9 p.m. prayer. And I've been doing it, whenever I meditate and going to sleep. And, sometimes it's a little bit harder than others, but it's been, very effective. And then to read this thing about, it's practicing for the moment of death, which is really important. I have a whole playlist about meditations, and I'm going to give some sittings and preparing for death, because that's a big part of what Sahaj Marg does. And I have some sittings up on that already. Some of these, I have some videos up there and sittings and things. And this is going to be a part of that playlist on the Gratefullness Meditation channel. And so, but I've been very impressed that I've been able to do that, not by myself, obviously. It's not something I would think I would be able to do. And I think it's really going to help me as a preceptor and doing spiritual work and all the things I do. Because, after you do it for a little bit, there's a reduction in thoughts. Even if you're having some thoughts, your tendency will be to go back to a thoughtless state, or, have your thoughts will be more subtle and less, having less an effect and all these things. Anyways, let me wrap this one up here. I'm going to continuously talk about this because I'm just starting to experiment with it. And, I don't know how long I'll be doing this or whether it'll be a permanent, part of my meditation. Again, thoughtlessness isn't a part of the goal, but it's actually a tool and something that can make meditation, where you're feeling things and you're like almost, it's times where if I'm doing preceptor work or I'm, meditating, it's like I'm experiencing life without a mind, like life without a physical brain, where you're, feeling your way, and there's, it's a different level of experience when you're when you're a bodiless soul, where your soul is no longer in a body, and you don't have eyes and sensory organs, and, you're in what would be darkness because you don't have the ability to feel, or you don't have the ability to see. And that you can feel things on a spiritual level, on an energetic level, and a thoughtless state opens that up. So anyways, again, I'm going to put this up on the Journey series, and then also those two other places. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramount, definitely pointing from the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day, and be grateful.